And we are back here on the Analytical Iowan podcast. It is Wednesday, May 20th, as I am recording this. And we got a lot to talk about because there's always a lot to talk about, at least with this administration. I've said it before, I miss the days when politics were pretty boring. Now, today, over on the Rational Boomer podcast, they are going to have a live from TikTok up as today's podcast. I was a guest on that panel. We talk about a lot of things. There's some great guests involved. I encourage you to go check it out because, well, it's another spot if you like my content where you can get a little more of me. Um, uh, while I am not the focus of that particular show, um, ends up being perfect for picking up part of it, and you get everybody else's perspective, which is one of the reasons why I like doing the lives myself. Now, I'm probably not going to get a live done. I might do a late night live, maybe Saturday night, maybe early Sunday night, one of the two. I think for it'll be the podcast for the following day, whichever day I end up doing it. So keep an eye out for that. No promises yet as to whether or not I will do the TikTok live. Those seem to actually be better podcasts for me. Also considering doing a YouTube live. Let me know in the comments here if you would prefer a YouTube live instead. I might do that. Um, the thing is, I went on a rant yesterday about TikTok, and I'm still pissed off. Um, when I have videos that I am watching on TikTok, and I've told you I have automation set up to help me put my content out there. Now, it's not perfect, not by any means, and it doesn't always it doesn't connect to everything. Certain apps do not allow for connection, and I wish they did. But when I put the same videos up on TikTok and YouTube, and they go up typically within about 20 minutes of each other, and I was sitting here recording last night, and I was watching uh, my video, one of them, and in the span of an hour, it had been up on TikTok for an hour. It was up on YouTube for like 40 minutes. And I went from getting, it was like less than 150 views for one of those videos. And I got upwards of 1,200. I think the video ultimately settled at over 2K. Um, it's just insane to me. And TikTok wants to take my videos. Uh, they don't want to pay us for being in the creator fund. So they change the rules in the algorithm for how it works. And you may have noticed that some of my TikTok videos, I am trying different hashtags. Um, all the way along, I had only ever used two hashtags consistently, and that was hashtag Analytical Iowan, hashtag Analytical Iowan podcast. Um, and one of the things that was suggested to me was trying to change out um, the hashtags to see if it works a little better. So I've been trying that, and it hasn't really worked that I've seen on TikTok. It's just their new way of doing videos is um, really frustrating because you can't get your videos to break out into any sort of numbers, not like you used to. Uh, one of my best videos ever on TikTok was one I recorded late night. It was a thought that came to me. I just put it out there to see what happens, and I did like 120K views on that one video alone. But now, because of the new ways they structure everything, It is so hard to get to those kind of numbers. All right. Well, we got to get into it. We have a lot to talk about. I'm complaining about TikTok because it's frustrating. For those of you watching on YouTube or Spotify, I thank you for taking the time to do that right now. Um, and we're going to get into some of the primary results. Last night we had some big primaries. Um, Now let's see here. We have Georgia Senate race. Um, Georgia Senate race is heading to a runoff. Um, and I'm not familiar with either one of these two candidates. Uh, Mike Collins or Derek Dooley. Now, I wish I was chatting with our friend Will from Georgia. He could tell me more um, about them. The third candidate, Earl Carter, only got 25% of the vote. The other 75% was, well, about 70% was split um, between Mike Collins and Derek Dooley, who are going to a runoff. Now, I'm not sure which one of those, if either one, is Trump backed. Now, John Ossoff, the incumbent Democrat, is not running for reelect, or he is running for reelection. He is not challenged, so he did not have a primary contender. Um, so he is, advancing to November. He's going to face the winner of that runoff. Um, let's see. We have Alabama. Both races for Alabama Senate are heading to a uh, runoff. Um, Now this race has no incumbent because Tommy Tuberville is running for governor. I believe he did win the primary. Um, so on the Republican side, uh, Donald Trump's endorsee Barry Moore only got 39% of the vote. Jared Hudson is the other one heading to um, the runoff. Steve Marshall came in third, but everybody else, there were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There were 7 people in this race, and 6 of them got 60% of the vote, split out amongst them. That uh, um, that it just tells you Donald Trump's back candidate is not necessarily the most popular one. Now I'm going to do some quick math here. 188, 825. I'm adding up the numbers to see how it compares Republicans to Democrats. Because the Democrat side is also heading to a runoff. I'm just curious to see if there were more votes for Democrat total or Republican total. And yeah, there was way more Republican votes cast. So, yeah, there was way more Republican votes cast than Democrat. But on the Democratic side, and I'm not familiar with either of these two names, Everett West and Dakari Lariat are both heading to a runoff. Now, people are worried you're going to see these Trump-backed candidates winning primaries, winning, um, heading to runoffs, those kind of things. And what does it mean? Well, I talked about this on a previous video. Does it mean anything? Sure. But look at this Alabama Senate race, the one I was just talking about. Barry Moore had Donald Trump's endorsement, only gets 39% of the vote, just over 39%. So realistically, how much weight did his endorsement carry? Was it enough? I don't know. Um, now, for Alabama governor, you have Tommy Tuberville. He comes out and he does win, and pretty decisively. And on the Republican side, on the Democratic side, it is Doug Jones. Both of them are former senators. Well, Tuberville is a current senator, but he's not seeking reelection, so he will be the potential uh, the potential uh, outgoing senator, I guess is where I'm going with it. So both of them are former senators. Now, going back to Georgia for a minute. We've got the governor race in Georgia. Um, we had a uh, term limited Brian Kemp, so he couldn't run again. Uh, President Donald Trump endorsed Burt Jones, and again, Trump's backed candidate only got 38.4% of the vote. Now, Rick Jackson is also advancing to a runoff at 32.5%. But the thing Donald Trump is celebrating right now is Brad Raffensperger, who was I think Raffensperger, is he Secretary of State for Georgia? I think, who is or has been a pretty staunch um, Trump opponent and was one of the ones that did not help Donald Trump do anything January 6th related. Um, Ends up in third, so not part of the runoff. Now we will see come the runoff, as with the other races that have gone to runoffs, if the Trump backed candidate actually carries. Right now in this race, 61% of the voters chose somebody other than the Trump backed candidate. If that happens again in the runoff, Rick Jackson becomes the Republican nominee. Now, if they fall in line and vote the way Donald Trump wants them to in a Republican primary, or maybe they don't vote at all, who knows? Burt Jones could be the Republican nominee. On the Democratic side, Keisha Lance Bottoms won the primary outright, no runoff needed. Faced a big field of potential primary challengers. But here's the thing. I'm just looking at the top two for the Democrat. I'll look at the top three for the Democrat side. 607, 221. Doing some quick math here. So on the Democratic side, 948,000 roughly votes were cast. On the Republican side, 357. looking at just the top three, I'll even go the top four for the Republican side. What did I say? 948. Yeah, 948,000 roughly for the Democratic side. 912,000 votes were cast on the top four for the Republican side. And when I look down ballot at the ones I didn't count on either side, there were even more votes on the Democratic side. Now, if these numbers hold, we could be staring at a Democratic governor for Georgia. That would be huge. And it might not be enough just having the endorsement of Donald Trump. Now, looking at Idaho, there was an Idaho primary. The incumbent, no surprise, Brad Little, won with about 59% of the vote. Doesn't look as good for Democrats in Idaho. Big difference here vote wise. Brad Little won with 59% of the Republican vote at 141,000 roughly. When Terry Pickens, she's going to advance as the Democratic nominee, but she only got 30,000 votes. Big difference. I don't see Idaho as being a potential flip. Looking at the House races, the big one is in Kentucky. That is not what I wanted. House races, Kentucky. There we go. That's what I wanted. 2026 Kentucky House primary. Where is the race I am looking for? There we go. District 4, Thomas Massie. In District 4, Gowron, who ran against Massie, is going to be the nominee. Now, Thomas Massie is the incumbent, 6-time incumbent, and Donald Trump had been pushing to oust Thomas Massie, mostly because Massie had gone ahead and pushed for the Epstein Files Transparency Act and things like that, among a few other things. But the thing here is with that, now when it comes to the rest of the term, Massie can vote however he wants. And you're going to have MAGAs coming in and try to say, well, Massie didn't answer to the voters, and that's why he's where he's at, and this and that. No, he voted the way he should have. And Republicans, specifically MAGA, they don't look at politics the way you should look at politics. About, are things better for you? Are your reps doing things to help you? Those kind of things. No, they look at it more like a sports team. And if your team wins, you cheer. If your team loses, you're pissed off. You know, they look at the president like the quarterback, or maybe the starting pitcher. I don't know, whichever way you want to look at it for sports, and that you're supposed to rally around and support that person and follow the play call of that person. And that's not how politics is ever supposed to be. Politics is supposed to be, um, you know, it's supposed to be about doing things to help everyday Americans. It used to be that Republicans and Democrats, um, while they didn't get along, they could at least find common ground and they could agree to do certain things. But when they disagreed, it wasn't necessarily about whether or not something should get done. Usually it was about the price tag and how much money should be spent. Like, oh, hey, we want to put in a new interstate from here to here, um, but it's going to run X amount of dollars, but we don't want to spend, you know, 10 million on it. Let's spend 8 and see if we can get it done for 8. That kind of thing. That's how, and it used to be you could get bipartisan agreements across the board for certain things. And now it seems like you could have both parties wanting to do the same thing, but if the other side proposes it, they have to automatically just go against it. All right, switching gears now to well, I guess we're going to continue to talk about the elections coming up. Um, start with this one. This comes from The Hill. John Thune predicts GOP will hold Senate after Trump endorses Paxton over Cornyn. We kind of talked about this toward the end of yesterday's podcast. Donald Trump finally came out and made an endorsement, but he's got Republicans on edge because he endorsed Ken Paxton over the incumbent Cornyn. Senate Majority Leader John Thune predicted the GOP will maintain its majority in November in comments made Tuesday, following Trump's endorsement of Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton in a closely watched GOP primary. President announced his support for Paxton on Truth Social, choosing him over incumbent John Cornyn, four-term senator who Trump says was not supportive of me when times were tough. See, that's how Donald Trump views it. And that's how a lot of MAGA views it, right? It's all about supporting Donald Trump. It's all about doing things to help Trump. And if you're not helping Trump, if you're not with us, you're against us. I have made the analogy before, and my Star Wars fans out there will get the reference. It's similar to what Anakin says on Mustafar to Obi-Wan. If you're not with me, then you are against me. And Obi-Wan replies, well, only Sith deal in absolutes. But that's how Donald Trump acts, right? You have to be with me. Now, Thune said he was very confident we'll hang on and maybe even expand the majority of the United States Senate, which is counter, I know, to the sort of, narrative these days. I'm not sure who said that. It sounds like something Trump would have said. Republicans right now do hold a 6-seat majority in the Senate. We need to flip 4 seats to get control. Now, the University of Virginia's nonpartisan Center for Politics has rated Senate races in Maine, Michigan, and North Carolina as toss-ups. Early voting in the runoff, which goes early voting started Monday, goes through Friday. Final day to cast ballots falling on May 26th. One poll released on Monday shows Cornyn and Paxton in a dead heat with nominee James Tallarico. Senator Murkowski of Alaska said she was supremely disappointed in Trump's endorsement of Paxton, which she said could make it tougher for Republicans to win against Tallarico. She said, based on the numbers I've seen, yeah, how does that help strengthen the president's hand when we lose a state like Texas? And that's the point, right? That's one of the things I've been saying. I've been saying the Senate's in play. Now, Donald Trump is doing all of these things. He's endorsing people like Paxton. He's going out, he's primarying Thomas Massie. He is going out on a strike of personal revenge, and he cares more about that than maintaining the Senate. Now, we've talked about where I think we can pick up seats in the Senate. If Paxton wins that runoff primary, I think Talrico has an easier time winning against Paxton. But if Cornyn wins, it's still a dead heat. I think Texas is in play. Iowa could be in play with no incumbent. Ohio with Sherrod Brown could be one that is in play. That is entirely possible. North Carolina, Roy Cooper looks to be the next senator from North Carolina. That could be a flip. Graham Plattner in Maine could be a flip. Portola in Alaska. Alaska could be a flip. There is an incumbent in Nebraska. The Democrat who won the primary in Nebraska. I had the results pulled up. I'm going to see if I can pull them back up again real quick. Now, this was a couple of weeks ago, but in Nebraska, Cindy Burbank, who did win the Democratic primary, dropped out in favor of, is it Osborne, I believe, who is the incumbent running for Nebraska. And Democrats are hoping that an incumbent can flip the seat in Nebraska, or an independent rather, can flip the seat and end up caucusing with the Democrats. So for John Thune to say that they're going to win or expand their majority is foolish. I think that is not necessarily going to be the case. Now, Susan Collins of Maine, who is staring at that Graham Plattner race and has a hard fight on her hands to potentially lose her race, was talking about Donald Trump and his endorsement of Ken Paxton. She says, quote, "I don't understand. He is an ethically challenged individual," end quote. And that's about as hard of a condemnation as you're going to get out of Susan Collins. She's always concerned about things, but she never comes out and says it was a bad move. Now, she also said, quote, "John Cornyn is an outstanding senator and deserved, in my judgment, the president's support. Obviously, it's the president's call, but I'm disappointed that he did it," end quote. That's, like I said, about as bad as you're going to get from Susan Collins. She walks that fence a lot. But it's definitely going to be a decision that ends up hurting the Republicans long term. Now, continuing talking about election stuff, you might have heard about this. Donald Trump has ordered the DOJ to investigate mail-in ballots in Maryland. Now, Donald Trump doesn't understand what's going on in Maryland at all. He said on Truth Social, quote, "In Maryland, they sent out 500,000 illegal mail-in ballots and they got caught. So now they're going to send out 500,000 more mail-in ballots, but nobody knows what's happening with the first 500,000 they sent," end quote. See, he doesn't understand what is going on. He also said, quote, "In addition, many of these ballots went to Democrats, So any Republican running in Maryland doesn't have a chance, end quote. First of all, these are for the primary, not the general election. Second, what happened was an error, okay? The state of Maryland hired a printing company to print the ballots and mail them out if you had gotten a mail-in ballot. But you get the one for the party you request. And if you requested a Republican ballot, you should get the Republican ballot. If you requested a Democrat, etc., you should get the Democratic ballot. Now, officials said that it was possible only a small number of voters received the wrong ballot, but any voter who got a ballot mailed before May 14th is going to um, receive a new one. Voters who requested print-at-home ballots were unaffected. So apparently there is an option in Maryland to go to your home printer and print your ballot that way, and you were fine. But what the way I understand it is the printer who printed out and mailed these ballots accidentally sent people who requested a Republican one. Some received the Democratic ballot by mistake, and vice versa. And because they had no way of knowing which voters got the wrong ballot, they scrapped the entire lot and they sent out new ones. And the new ballots are going to say replacement ballot on it, and only the replacement ballot is going to count, regardless of if you received the correct one the first time around. They are invalidating all of those, and they took steps to make sure you couldn't vote twice or vote in the wrong primary. It was already dealt with. But see, Donald Trump latched on to this whole story, and he is trying to make it out to be a fake thing and it to be a big story because he wants his narrative of mail-in voter fraud. But see, he votes by mail himself. Not fraud if he does it, but he wants no one else to be able to vote by mail because he knows that when you make it accessible for people to vote, there is a better chance of them voting, and higher voter turnout works against Donald Trump. Now, Maryland is a state that is typically Democratic anyway, and at least in statewide races, the numbers, this isn't going to help um, Donald Trump, right? It's not. But he's trying to find a way to explain away why he didn't win in Maryland or why this didn't work. And he's going to try to use it to push for some of his restrictive voting reform changes. But it's too late, really, to change a lot of things for November. We're already in May. Um, we're almost to the end of May. We are almost 5 months out to the midterm elections. And that seems weird to say, but we are about at the halfway point to get there for the year. And Donald Trump is looking for any excuse as to why he lost the midterms. This story just happens to give him some leverage. Now, what's the DOJ going to find when they go to do their investigation? They're probably going to find that there was a mistake made by the printer, and the state took steps to rectify it and made sure that nobody was eligible to vote twice because our system works. Republicans can never actually point to any actual examples of rampant fraud or rampant illegal people voting or anything like that. They can't prove it, but they claim it all the time. Now, talked yesterday about this settlement with Donald Trump and the IRS. He's creating a 1.776 billion, and that number is intentional because they use 1776 as a rallying cry for patriots. Uh, they're trying to create this fund to pay all sorts of supposed claims against the administration for people who were wrongfully prosecuted under Biden. Translation: my supporters got caught doing illegal things, and I want to pay them because they did illegal things for me. Um, but uh, Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche signed an order yesterday that bars the IRS forever from examining President Trump's prior tax returns. It prohibits the IRS from pursuing claims against Trump, his family, his businesses, saying the agency releases, waives, acquits its pending action and is forever barred and precluded from, from pursuing claims against the president. The document comes after the Justice Department and Trump moved to voluntarily dismiss a $10 billion lawsuit against the agency for leaking its tax returns. In exchange, the Justice Department created a $1.776 billion anti-weaponization fund to compensate individuals who allege they have been unfairly treated by previous administrations. Translation: the Biden administration. In seeking to voluntarily dismiss the case, parties are sidestepping a federal judge who had asked Trump and the Justice Department to explain whether they were truly adversaries, which they can't be if they are both working for Donald Trump. The single-page document says the tax agency will not be allowed to probe any of Trump's tax returns filed before the effective date of Monday's settlement agreement for any presently known or unknown claims. Quote, as is customary in settlements, both sides have executed waivers of a variety of claims that were or could have been brought. There would be little point in settling over significant claims if either party could simply turn around and seek to initiate more adverse claims that could have been previously pursued, end quote, a Justice Department spokesman said in the statement. This is only in respect to existing audits, not future. However, it also included anybody who is connected to Donald Trump, his family, his businesses, and other Trump connected people. Now, I don't know how this is going to work. Now, Democratic lawmakers have already argued that creation of the fund was corruption and a way to funnel money to Trump allies, including those who rioted in the Capitol on January 6, 2021, and have since launched suits seeking settlements over their convictions. So, and the Democrats are already talking about suing and trying to prevent this from happening. Senator Jack Reed, Democrat from Rhode Island, said, quote, this all seems to be an obvious abuse of power by the Department of Justice by the president. He negotiated essentially with himself. You're his appointee. The IRS are his appointees. He's the plaintiff. End quote. That's the problem here. Now, is this going to work? I don't know. They are going to sue over it. There's going to be, I guarantee you, massive lawsuits. And I don't know if this could potentially be overturned by Congress. The settlement could be overturned as far as the $1.776 billion. And some Republicans are not happy about it either. They could potentially tack a rider into one of their bills prohibiting the spending of that money. This is probably going to go the same way the claim against the Senate went. You may remember in the one big beautiful bullshit bill, or maybe it was in the budget bill in November, one of the two. The Senate Republicans had put in a claim where they could get $500,000 apiece for claims against the DOJ if they had their cell phone seized as part of the ongoing investigation. And then in a follow-up bill, they took it back out because they realized it was, uh, publicly unpopular and bad form. So, um, that could end up being uh, a big problem uh, for them. Now, the lawsuits could prevent the payment from going through. It could toss the whole thing out potentially as an illegal settlement. We will have to see. The courts have been up doing a lot of heavy lifting when it comes to upholding things and prohibiting this administration from doing a lot of things. Um, moving on to uh, Donald Trump, and he was defending his ballroom. He defends the ballroom construction during a tour of the construction site. Again, this comes from The Hill. I love The Hill. At least I've been liking it a lot more lately than other mainstream media. Um, President Trump defended construction of the White House ballroom in remarks. This came yesterday. Quote, he's told reporters, quote, that all of this is paid for by myself. End quote. He also referred to it as a gift to taxpayers. Um, Now he was talking about the security benefits of the structure. He said it is necessary for the ballroom to be built with what you see over here. The ballroom becomes a shield for everything you see here. He also described it as the one opportunity for the military to do something, though he was short on what that means. These come as Republicans on Capitol Hill are struggling to get a consensus on the billion-dollar funding for the ballroom. The Senate parliamentarian had said that they cannot use it as part of the reconciliation package, but that doesn't work. And Donald Trump has been railing against parliamentarian Elizabeth McDonough. And this isn't the first time he's gone against the Senate parliamentarian. Whenever he gets a ruling that doesn't go his way, he's called for the parliamentarian to be fired. It has yet to happen, and I don't think it will. Um, Now he's not going to get Democratic support um, for the ballroom, but he's making it seem like this ballroom is necessary. I've said before, it would have been an easier pill to swallow if he would have come out with all of that before they tore it down, if they would have gone to Congress, gotten the approval, and was clear and upfront about why they're doing it. But the bunker and everything else is secondary. Donald Trump wants the ballroom for his pet project, right? He does. He wants the ballroom as a vanity project for himself so that he gets the fame and recognition he thinks he deserves, that kind of thing. And he doesn't deserve it, but he's looking at his legacy. He wants to have that on his conscience and all of it. Now, I'm seeing a lot of people talking about this bunker and about how, well, that just means Donald Trump isn't planning on leaving office. And he's made comments before about, and I think it was at this event, but I could be getting my wires crossed, that he made comments about being here in 28 and in 32. But he has said it at multiple events. Donald Trump is ineligible to run in 2028. Plain and simple. Constitution doesn't allow it. They do not have the votes to allow him to run again. They can't change the Constitution to make it so he runs. And if the Republicans were dumb enough, if the RNC was fucking dumb enough to allow him to run, put him on the primary ballots in 28, which I don't even know if he'll be alive come 2028. He's not looking good. and more we're seeing him falling asleep in meetings, falling asleep standing up. Um, I don't think he has got 2+ years left uh, this side of the land of the living. Um, and even so, if the Republicans were fucking dumb enough to put him out there and to run him as a presidential candidate in 2028, none of the votes for him should count. In fact, when Congress meets during that joint session to count the votes, guess what? They would have to toss out electoral votes from any state that voted for Donald Trump on grounds that he is constitutionally ineligible to run. But he's not going to be around. And as far as him just hunkering down in the bunker and staying past his term, or staying if they try to impeach and remove him or use the 25th or whatever, it doesn't matter. Okay? What matters is come 12 noon, at the absolute latest, 12 noon, January 20th, 2029, a new president is going to be sworn in. And when they put their hand possibly on the Bible or whatever document they swear by, if they swear on anything, but when they raise their right hand and say the oath, the minute they're done, they're the president. They have the full powers of the office. Period. Okay? Perfect example is Nixon. When Nixon resigned the presidency, come 12 noon, and that's what the time he set was 12 noon Eastern, he was going to no longer be president. He and Gerald Ford was going to take the oath of office. Come 12 noon, as Nixon is on Air Force One flying back to California, going home in disgrace. When it hits 12 noon Eastern or whatever, wherever they were in the country, I don't know what time zone they were in at that point, but whatever time was equivalent to 12 noon Eastern, they had to radio the nearest tower and change their call sign from Air Force One to whatever the call sign of the plane was as a generic plane. Because at that point, Nixon was a private citizen. He was no longer the president. Ford became president as of 12 noon, and it didn't matter, right? After at 12:01 p.m. Eastern time, even though he was on Air Force One, or what was Air Force One, if Nixon would have tried to sign an executive order, it would have been null and void. Donald Trump is going to be in the same boat if he tries to hide out in a bunker or whatever. Come whatever time he is no longer president, whether that is him being removed by the 25th Amendment, if he gets impeached and removed, or at the very latest, 12 noon, January 20th, 2029, if he lives that long, the next winner of an election is going to be the president. And if it is in 2029, that person is probably going to be a Democrat, and he won't hesitate to send, I'm sure, the Secret Service in to take the squatter out of the White House at that point. If Donald Trump is still in the White House by that point, and I don't think he will be, I don't anticipate Donald Trump, if he is around, I think he is going to do again what he did the last time. He's going to slink off in the middle of the night. He's going to slink off to Mar-a-Lago if he's still alive. And he's not going to be there when the next president takes over. In fact, I would say the same thing about if they impeach and remove him or they use the 25th. He's not going to try to hole up in the bunker. He's going to try to sneak away in disgrace. And he's going to go, well, I don't think he is going to be in front of the cameras much, um, because he's not going to want to have to face the tough questions that he would get. Well, now that you're no longer president, or how do you feel now that they've kicked you out, or those kind of things. He's not going to want to have to face any of that kind of question. Now, we've been talking a lot about what's been going on with the midterms. One of the last things I want to talk about quick also comes from the Hill. Republicans trail Democrats by double digits on generic congressional ballot, according to a survey. A new poll, and if you follow me for a while, you know I don't entirely trust polls. They can be wrong. Look at what was considered the gold standard was the polling done by the Des Moines Register going into 2024, and they predicted that Kamala Harris could win Iowa. And not only did she lose, she lost by outside the margin of error. A new poll shows Republican trailing Democrats by double digits on a generic congressional ballot. A survey released Monday by the New York Times Siena poll shows that 50% of respondents said they would vote for a Democratic candidate in their district. Comparatively, 39% they would back the Republican nominee, with 11% being unsure. 39% of the participants identified as Democrat, 29% identified Republican, and 35% were independent. 3% were part of another party, and 5% said they didn't know or didn't want to answer. As a percentage of the total electorate, a plurality, 38% said they voted for Trump, 37% said they voted for Vice President Harris, and 18% said they did not vote. Now, that 18% that did not vote is a problem. They need to be getting out and voting all the way across. 90% of the survey takers said they plan to participate in midterms versus 7% who said they were unlikely to vote. 2% said they didn't know. Now, looking at this, you are saying only 39% of the respondents said they would vote for the Republican candidate guaranteed, but 38% said they voted for Trump. So 38% of the people that responded to this poll had voted for Trump and are still going to end up voting for the Republican. The rest, he's losing independents, he's losing people who do not identify as Republican or Democrat. This potentially could end up being a huge upset for the Democrats in the midterms. I have been saying for a long time, I think the Senate's in play. I think we can get to 51, 52, maybe 53 seats at the most. I will take anything over 51, 51 being the minimum needed to have control, 52 being a safe number to offset Fetterman. And then the House by 30 to 50 seats. And this polling, as much as I don't like polls, just shows that what the Republicans are doing is unpopular, and it's not getting any better. All right, that is going to do it for today's episode of the Analytical Iowan podcast. I want to thank you for taking the time to join me today. Hope you guys have a great day. I will be back again tomorrow. Still looking for people to join me here on the show. So I encourage you, if you have interest in talking politics, send me an email, analyticaliowan@gmail.com. We'll set up a Zoom call. We will have a conversation, and we can talk politics, talk about what's going on. Everybody's got a different opinion, and we can go from there. Otherwise, if you have questions you want me to answer, same thing, send me an email, analyticaliowan@gmail.com, and I will try to get to as many of them as I can here on the podcast. So I want to thank you for taking the time to join me today. Hope you guys have a great day, and we will be back tomorrow.